Hi, it's Kelly Schneider again. So I want to talk about another issue that's kind of important to me. Well, actually, it's very important to me. And I think that we should really look at photography conferences, maybe in a new light, maybe in a new way, maybe as a studio owner or as a professional photographer, we need to look at attending conferences from a little bit more of a serious perspective. So I think it's important to hear this. So photography conferences are often presented as essential for professional growth. Is that still the case in 2025, 2026? Are we still needing a conference for our professional growth? It's a good question. But in today's economy, are they actually a smart investment? That's the question. Is your return on investment what you want it to be? What you think it should be? Or is it just a social get together, have fun, have a few drinks, see somebody's images on the wall, buy some new gear, network, be inspired by your friends and colleagues? I don't know. And there's value in that too. But in this video, we're going to look at the numbers. We're going to really look at the numbers. And at the end of this, I'll have a reference document that shows where all the references and the studies and the PPA and other information that I'm using as references comes from. Income, educational budgets, rising cost, opportunity cost, return on investment, ROI. This is not an anti-conference video. This is a data-driven look at smarter, more sustainable professional development. So look at the economic reality of today. So let's start with the economic reality of photography, just professional photography. According to the U.S. Labor Department, the median photographer income is about $42,000 a year. That's it, $42,000 a year. That's the average photographer's income. Is that getting less or more? Are there studios out there making $250,000 or more? Yes, likely there is. Are there photographers out there that are bringing in less than $20,000 a year? Yes, this is the medium, according to the Department of Labor. That number varies widely, as I just said. But it tells us something very important. Most photographers operate on modest and inconsistent income. One month you make 20 grand, another month you make 2. Most photographers operate on a very well-defined income, but again, it varies based on the season and the type of photography you're doing. Revenue is seasonal. Cash flow fluctuates. Most photographers are owner-operators. What does that mean? That means they carry all the financial risk. We own our studio. We assume the risk for our finances. So discretionary spending, it must be done with strategy. You must say, I have $3,000 or $4,000 for the year to spend on equipment, conferences, education, whatever, or more, depending on your studio. So it's not automatic. I can't say every January I'm going to a conference, the Imaging USA conference. Every March I'm going to go to WPPI. Every September I'm going to New York for the B&H conference. I can't. It can't be automatic. You must be strategic in your decision. It's changing. Our landscape in professional photography is changing. With AI and everything else, whether that's a negative impact in your finances or your clients, we have to take it all into consideration. Education benchmarks. Let's look at just education itself. Across industries, there's a clear benchmark for education spending. When I was in charge of the education for the nuclear aircraft carrier, we knew the budgeting process per sailor was a certain amount, and my budget was accordingly. I was provided enough funding to cover enough education to meet the requirements of the military, the Navy, but a given budget. So healthy organizations invest about 2.9% of revenue into education each year. 2.9%. That's industry standard. That's whether it's DoD, whether it's civilian organizations, corporations, or In this case, professional photographers should be probably around the same thing. But are you? That education budget competes with marketing, buying new equipment, and staffing, software, new investments of software, and insurance, and other costs that you may have. But here's the problem. One conference often consumes the entire year of your discretionary spending. Now you may say, "Well, I'm going to go to imaging, and part of my cost, my hotel, the food, the travel, all those expenses plus buying new gear, that's it. You're going to blow your entire budget for your discretionary spending in those 3 or 4 days of a conference." That may be your choice. But before travel, before lost work time, and before rising costs are even taken into consideration, the conference cost can be pretty significant, assuming you're in the $42,000 range for your studio, which is average. Remember, that's average. If you're making $1 million a year, going to imaging or WPPI or both or Shutterfest, maybe every conference there is, even overseas, maybe that's within your means. Most photographers today probably are not in that situation. So let's look at the true conference cost. So as you can see in these documents or these graphics I'm showing, the real numbers. A professional photography conference typically costs between $200 and $3,200. That's on average, depending on whether you do luxury, you upgrade your room, you're flying premium economy or business class. All the other variables come into play. But that's about what it includes, what it costs. But the cost includes registration, airfare, 4 nights of lodging on average, meals, and ground transportation. These are not luxury costs. These are the actual costs. If you go to imaging or whatever, you're going to be paying something around those numbers. These are realistic average expenses. And as you can see in the graphics, that's what the numbers show. For many photographers, this is a major investment. You go to imaging and you're going to spend $2,000 or $3,000, $4,000. That's a major investment for most studios, at least based on the Department of Labor and people that are, claiming their income. Now let's add context. So at $40,000 in annual revenue, one conference equals to 5 to 8% of total revenue. Remember, industry standard is 2.9%, but you're looking at 5 to 8% based on a $40,000, $42,000, $45,000 income. So you take the conference at $2,000 to $3,000 or $4,000, and you're $42,000. You're beyond the normal investment of education that most industries accept. It's high. At $60,000, it's still 3 to 5%. You're still on the upper levels of what the industry standard investment in education is, just to go to one conference. So even at $80,000, conference costs can exceed the recommended education limits or be about. So you're going to have to make $80,000 of profit in order for you to find that going to imaging or going to WPPI or going to Shutterfest is a viable investment based on the average industry standard for education. Now, out of the three, Shutterfest is the least expensive, imaging is second, and WPPI is slightly higher, and that's probably because of Vegas. But this matters. For most photographers, one conference already crosses a financial risk threshold. You make a decision to go to imaging or WPPI or Shutterfest, then you're doing so knowing that there's a financial risk because it's higher than the average industry standard for investment of education. That's just the facts. So let's look at margin compression. What is a margin? How much room do you have? How much flexibility do you have in your spending? Rising costs. Industry data shows that business expenses increased 6 to 10% over the last 2 years. So now you have $42,000, and now your cost to run your business is higher, and therefore your discretionary spending is smaller. So what used to be 2.9%, when you're higher costs, you now have a little less that you could spend on a conference. But the conference costs aren't going down. They're either staying the same or going higher, and most of them are going higher. Pricing often does not keep pace with inflation. It's not like you can tell your client, well, I'm going to charge you twice as much because of the cost increase. A lot of industries can. I'm not sure if photographers can. Based on the research, they usually don't, and they usually can't because they may lose clients. We've already seen that. That means less margin. You don't have enough room to play to go to multiple conferences or a conference. You have to look at the return on investment. So risk tolerance is lower than it used to be. You don't have the space. Look at opportunity cost. So there's another cost that's often ignored. Opportunity cost. Conferences usually mean less lost billable days. You're not in your studio. You're not working. You're not having clients come in. You're not shooting. You're on a conference. Slower client responses. If you're in the middle of a class, you're in the middle of walking around, you're socializing with your friends and colleagues, you're not responding to clients, assuming you needed to. Delayed deliverables, missed marketing cycles. Those are opportunity costs that you must consider when you go to a conference. You try to schedule, nothing's going on during that time in January, maybe no weddings, there's no clients, there's nothing going on, or maybe there is and you're asking them to move the dates. When you factor that in, the true cost often exceeds the sticker price by 30 to 50%. Why it feels valuable. Why does a conference feel valuable? I mean, I love going to imaging and seeing my friends and having a drink at the bar, seeing the beautiful work that people did for the competitions, whether it's ICON or IPC or whatever. The conferences offer inspiration. They really do. I mean, you get to see people you've seen, you've talked to, you look up to, and you get inspired by their talk or what they're doing, and you get inspired because people talk about you and what you've done over the last year. You have that feeling of community, the belonging, motivation is increased. Those things really do matter, and so there's value there. So that's part of the decision process. Do I go to the conference because of inspiration, community, belonging, and motivation? Or is there other reasons? What is the investment return? But emotional value is not the same as financial return on investment. I can get emotional by going to it and I come back the same photographer with the same situation and not make a dime more, but I just spent $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000. Is that okay with you? Is that going to be continuous to where you find out that you just can't afford it anymore because you're not increasing your income? You're not increasing your skill sets to compensate for that income or that investment. Feeling inspired does not guarantee profitable results. I said it again. Feeling inspired does not guarantee a profitable result. So, going to a conference, is those things so important to where it's good enough to spend the money? I don't know. When it makes sense. Conferences can make sense under specific conditions. They're often justified when the goal is speaking or teaching. Hey, I'm a speaker. Imaging USA has invited me to come and speak to photographers for 90 minutes or 3 hours. Or maybe you're even going to do a pre-con class and it's an all-day event. So you're going to go spend all your money and get paid a little bit to go speak or do your presentation, or maybe it's brand partnerships. Maybe you're being sponsored by a background company or a lighting company or an album company, whatever the case is. So there's a good reason to go because first of all, they may provide you some financial incentive to attend, to speak on their behalf, to advertise their stuff. Maybe it's leadership positioning. Maybe you want to go to show leadership, to be recognized. Go to a conference or a committee, be a part of leadership. So there's a good reason to maybe go to the conference. Vendor negotiations. Hey, you're going to get ready to do the following things. You need some new backdrops, and you're looking to talk to some vendors about negotiations about the best deal for you and your studio. Another good reason to go face to face to see the vendors. And then strategic networking. I think that's probably my biggest thing that I ever went to the conferences was the networking. Now, don't get me wrong. When I first went to Imaging USA, I went to their, the three hour long events, and I tried to go to the pre-cons. Those were at least all day. So I found, as an educator, I found a lot more value in the pre-con because it's an all day, hands-on. You really get a little bit more in depth than a 90-minute somebody gets up and speaks to you. I want to be in front of educators, and when I'm doing something, I'm learning a skill, the knowledge and theory and skill. But in these cases, conferences functions as marketing or business development, which is good, but it's not education. The distinction is critical. If you think you're going to go to a conference and be deeply educated, you better have signed up for the all-day pre-con classes, or if there's offering of off-site or other events that are all day long, hands-on by somebody that you have so much respect for, that consistently produces or shoots the way you want to, and you want to learn that, there you go. But most conferences, as a structured event, is not. They're a group of 40 or 50 small, short duration speaking events where you get to sit and listen and watch some PowerPoints, which is important for theory and knowledge, but it doesn't build a skill. So let's look at structured education. Let's compare options. Conferences are broad, fast-paced, and difficult to measure. They're broad. I mean, there's so many various tracks, various classes. There may be 10 different options to take between 5 and 7 p.m. Depends on the conference. Structured education is targeted, deeper, and outcome driven. When you go to Texas school, whether you're taking Tim Walden or myself and Kalina's class, or Shannon Squires, or any of those other well-known educators, Sandra Pierce, the Hammonds, you're going to know what you're going to cover, how you're going to cover it, what the objectives are, and you're going to spend time, lots of time, learning that process from the theory and knowledge to development of skill, and you're going to walk away with something tangible, something that made you a better photographer. That can produce results. That can increase income, that can increase your skill, therefore increasing possible clients. That's structured education. It usually has a lower overhead. You go to a class, you could take the cost of imaging, and you can actually spend an entire week at Texas school or GLIP or West Coast school or whatever school that you think, and spend an entire 3 or 4 or 5 days with a single instructor covering a subject that really is important to you for the same cost as going to Las Vegas for 4 days. So consider that. For many photographers, structured education offers a safer and stronger return on investment. As an educator with a master's program degree, I can tell you that science shows that. Going to 30 different 90-minute sessions, you're going to walk away with a whole bunch of interesting things, but you probably were not going to remember but maybe 5% of what you saw or what you heard. So decision check. Before registering, ask yourself, what exact outcome am I buying? What are you going to buy? I mean, you may say, well, it's something I love to do, and it's an annual thing to go and spend time with my friends and everything else. Then that's your decision. But you do it consciously, that you know you're making that decision in order to hang out with buddies and friends and that kind of thing. What exactly? How am I going to measure success? If you go to a conference, how are you going to measure success? Are you going to say, okay, I'm going to map out. I'm going to go to a pre-con class, and then I'm going to go to the following courses, and then some secondary person is offering their own personal workshop during the time in Vegas or Nashville or wherever you are, and I'm going to attend that because that's a real educational opportunity. And then I'm going to hit the vendor floor because there's some new equipment that I want to see. I'm going to listen to or watch the image competition so I can learn judges and see how that's going. So the aggregate of all of those things may say, conferences is right for me. I'm going to go to this conference because I can do those things. But let's say the conference doesn't have a pre-con class that scratches an itch. Maybe they're 90-minute sessions. There's very few that really makes an impact that you need to do. Maybe there's no off-site events that are going on that you want to be a part of that's going to help and grow and develop you. And maybe all of the equipment that you want to buy from the vendor floor, the vendors are having online show specials that are available. You can buy it online. So you don't have to physically be there. You have to make those decisions. And I actually have a downloadable thought process. You can calculate and say whether this is a good decision or not. So what is the break-even point? I mean, at what point do you say, okay, that's enough for me for that cost, and I'm going to walk away with the following? It's a yes, I'm going to go. Or you know what? Maybe this year I don't go. Maybe I spend my money and go to a Texas school. That is where I'm going to grow and develop as a photographer. That's going to make me a better studio. That's going to make me more valuable to my client. If the answers aren't clear, the investment is likely speculative. So let's conclude. Photography conferences are not inherently bad. They're not. But they are financially risky when treated as default education. If you just say, I'm going to go to Imaging USA, or I'm going to go to WPPI, or I'm going to go to Shutterfest, and I am going to be fully educated, that may not be a good default. Although, and I'd love to go to Shutterfest, I think Shutterfest, based on what I'm told and what I hear, probably provides a pretty significant, excellent education. But you have to make that decision. Modern professionals must choose growth paths that are intentional and measurable and financially sound. You don't have a choice. Corporations don't have a choice. Boeing doesn't have a choice. Medical field, plumbers, electricians, they have to determine whether or not sending their people to this conference has enough viable value that it's worth the investment or not. And you as a single photographer owning a studio, you have to do the same thing. The days of us thinking that I'm a PPA member or I'm going to WPPI because that's what I do every year, you really need to step back and say, okay, with everything going on in the professional photography industry, is this a sound investment? Or do I say, I'm going to West Coast School, I'm going to Texas School, I'm going to New York School of Photography, I'm going to whatever, Santa Fe training photography class. Modern professionals must choose growth paths that are intentional, measurable, and financially sound. And I can't stress that enough. Smarter decisions lead to longer careers. Well, that's no kidding. I mean, if the income stream is proving to be challenging and you're trying to find ways to bring more, spending $2,000 or $3,000, $4,000 going to a conference that doesn't provide you a return on investment is probably something you need to relook at. Anyway, so those are my 2 cents on professional photography conferences. Feel free to ask me questions down below. If you want to call and talk to me, you want to give me your 2 cents, great. I do not make any excuses for my thoughts, but this is how I think. This is what I believe, and I do that for hopefully the benefit of those who listen. Take care. Bye.